In the bustling city of Lima, there lived a beautiful family of four known as the Andersons. The father, Eric, lived with his beautiful wife, Avery, and their lovely children, Harry, who was 12 years old, and his kid sister, Abby, who was 8. Harry was a very good child and a high-flying student at school. He played sports at school and had a lot of friends. He always had one school activity or the other to get to. Abby loved her big brother. Their sibling bond was lovely to behold. Their parents loved to take Abby to watch her brother's games. Eric Anderson and his wife also cherished each other, just like their children. However, Eric's business was gradually failing. His wife, who was previously a stay-at-home mom, decided to get a job to support her husband and family. Despite her little earnings and support, Eric's business finally crashed. He was in desperate need of a loan to revive the business, but the banks kept turning him down and his friends couldn't help. It was so bad that he contemplated selling their house and moving to a smaller place with his family. "I don't know what else to do, Avery," Eric lamented one evening, holding his head in his hands. Tears shimmered in his eyes. "The banks don't consider me worthy of being given a loan. I don't know what else to do." Avery rubbed her husband's back in circles to calm him down. Then, with a small quirk of her brow, she leaned forward to whisper to him, "Have you called your brother?" Eric looked up at her. "Mitch?" "No, Avery. He has done enough for us. I can't bother him anymore." Mitch was Eric's younger brother. His own business, a logistics company which he started 5 years ago, had grown tremendously over the years and made Mitch a young millionaire. Mitch was responsible for the capital that helped Eric set up his business in the first place. Before that, Mitch sponsored Eric and Avery's wedding, helped them buy their first home, and helped foot their bills whenever they called. Though Eric was grateful for his brother's help over the years, he didn't like running to his brother for help all the time. Mitch had his own responsibilities, and Eric didn't want his family to be like a burden to his kid brother. "I don't want to call him," Eric repeated. Avery sighed. "You just said it yourself that you are out of options. Please, let's put our pride aside and do it for the well-being of our children. Mitch is our last hope, and you know he doesn't mind helping us out. You can accept his help as a loan if it makes you feel better. We have to call him." Eric knew his wife was right. He couldn't watch his family sink too, so that night, he swallowed his pride and called Mitch. His brother was elated to hear from him. After exchanging pleasantries, Eric went on to ask his brother for help. "That's not a problem, bro. You know I love to help where I can. I'm sorry about your business. I'll send you the money. You don't have to pay it back unless you want to." Mitch said, "Thank you so much, Mitch. I am forever in your debt." When Eric hung up, he got an alert within minutes. Mitch had credited his account with double the loan asked for. Eric was in awe. Avery was overjoyed. "I told you Mitch got us covered. Who needs a bank when you have a caring brother like Mitch?" Eric smiled. With the money, he was able to make some wise financial decisions, and within 3 months, he was back in business. This was just in time for the Christmas holidays. Eric couldn't be more excited. His son's birthday rolled by. Harry was about to become a teenager, and he was very excited. As usual, he pestered his parents for an expensive birthday party. He wanted to impress his friends. Eric couldn't afford to spend so much money on a party as it could cripple his business again. Avery sat Harry down and tried to negotiate for a smaller party. Harry reluctantly caved even though he was sad. He had friends coming from his soccer team, music class, and a few social clubs he belonged to. Abby tried to cheer him up, but she failed to perk up Harry's mood. On the eve of Harry's birthday, someone knocked on the front door. Eric was helping Avery in the kitchen, so he sent Harry to go peep to see who it was. Harry stood up begrudgingly and dragged his feet to the door with a sour look on his face. He looked through the peephole and his eyes doubled in size. The next thing his family heard was a loud scream. "It's Uncle Mitch," Harry announced gleefully. He kept jumping up and down in excitement. Uncle Mitch was his only uncle and, thankfully, his favorite uncle. He was richer than Harry's dad and always spoiled Harry and Abby with presents on their birthdays and during holidays. Harry was excited to see his uncle on the eve of his birthday. That meant he had some time and hope of fixing his drab birthday arrangements and impressing his many friends. "Uncle Mitch." Harry exploded after opening the door to find his uncle with a small suitcase by his side, which meant that his uncle planned to spend some time with the family for the holidays. Mitch spread out his arms and caught Harry in a bear hug. He kissed his nephew's cheek and played with his hair on the porch before his brother came out. "Mitch." Eric gasped in shock at the sight of his brother. Avery was just as astonished to see Mitch as her husband, was because Mitch never mentioned visiting them for the holidays. "We weren't expecting you. You should have told us you were coming, so we would have made adequate preparations to welcome you," Avery uttered. "It wouldn't be a surprise then." Mitch smiled richly before entering the house. While everyone was reeling with excitement over Mitch's surprise visit, one person stood a few paces away, face coated in shock and fear. "Hi, Abby," Mitch said, noticing his little niece by the corner. Everyone turned to Abby. "Come say hello to your uncle, Abby." Eric encouraged his shy daughter. Avery stretched out a hand to her daughter and also egged her on. Despite Harry pulling on his uncle's shirt, Mitch kept his eyes fixed on his niece. Abby broke out in a sweat, clenched and unclenched her fist before going to hug her uncle. When his hands went around her, she pressed her eyes shut and tightened her lips. "Good girl," Mitch voiced, patting her back. He released her and pinched her cheeks. "I got a lot of presents for you and Harry." "Really?" Hay squealed, then rushed to ransack his uncle's suitcase. His mother stopped him with a look. "Yes, really." Mitch pulled the kids to the couch and unlocked his suitcase. Just like he said, he brought out some gifts and handed them to each child. Harry cried happy tears for his new iPhone while his sister accepted her new pink dress with sweaty hands. They both thanked their uncle along with their parents, who were almost stunned to silence. "Thank you, Mitch, but you really shouldn't have," Avery and Eric continued to say throughout the night while enjoying a glass of wine with their guest. Mitch dismissed their words with a wave of his hand. "I have truly missed you guys, especially the kids. It's been 8 months since I last visited, and we live in the same city. Isn't that crazy?" He sighed. "I should visit more often. It hurt my feelings when Abby didn't rush to give me a hug the way Harry did." Avery smiled thinly. "I'm sorry. You know she is a shy kid. I should go tuck them in and say goodnight. Now that I am here for the holidays, I will do all I can to re-establish my bond with my niece before leaving. I'm sure she'll love that," Eric told him. With a nod, he excused himself to go see the kids before bed. Meanwhile, Abby had snuck out of her room to her brothers. "Harry, did you hear what I said? I want to sleep in your room tonight," she whispered with a small voice, but Harry was too preoccupied with playing games on his new phone to pay attention to his little sister. Abby felt sad. Ever since her brother's popularity and friend circle started to grow, he has been spending less time with her. Unlike him, she didn't have friends at school. Harry was her best friend, but the older he got, the less certain she became of that fact. "Harry," she called him. "Go to bed, Abby." "I am busy," he replied without taking his eyes off his phone screen. Abby tried to climb into bed with him, and he frowned. "What are you doing? You have your own room." "I had a nightmare," she lied. "Can I just sleep here instead? I am afraid to be by myself." "Why don't you go sleep in Mommy and Daddy's room?" he suggested, uncomfortable with the impromptu nightcap. "They won't let me. Mom will only try to tuck me back in my bed and assure me that I will be fine. Maybe you're just imagining things. Go to your room. I'm sure you'll be fine. Please, Harry, just this time." Harry's frown disappeared as someone rapped on his door, and Mitch poked his head in. "Uncle Mitch. Just who I wanted to see." While Mitch entered, Abby took a few steps back as her brother lunged from his bed to hug his uncle. "Thank you for my gift. It's amazing. I didn't think you'd get my message." "Of course I did. I was already planning on coming over for the holidays, so what's arriving a few days earlier than planned?" Harry rubbed his hands. "Does this mean I can expect some help with my birthday party? Don't tell your parents yet, but yes. It's going to be a big surprise for everyone, including you." Harry did a funny dance around his room. "Quiet. You should be asleep. Your parents think you are, so get back in bed. You have a big day tomorrow." Mitch hefted his nephew into bed and covered a duvet around him. Abby lowered her eyes when Mitch turned to her. "Abby, shouldn't you be in your room?" She had a nightmare and is too afraid to sleep by herself. Harry supplied before his uncle could ask him. "Poor Abby. That's okay. I'll tuck you into bed and stay with you till you fall asleep. I think I'll just sleep in my mom's room," Abby said, avoiding her uncle's eyes. When she tried to leave, Mitch stopped her. "Your parents are tired and already went to bed. I don't think you should bother them. You're a big girl now. You should learn to sleep on your own. Anyway, I am here. I'll help you." Harry already shut his eyes, willing sleep to come out of excitement for his birthday tomorrow. Because of this, he didn't see the look of discomfort on his sister's face as Mitch pulled her away. Back in her room, Mitch helped Abby into bed and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. I missed you, Abby, he said softly. Did you miss me? Abby pressed her eyes shut and pretended to be falling asleep, but her uncle didn't go away. Do you remember our little game? You promised not to tell anyone, remember? I didn't. Abby croaked out. That's a good girl. Please, uncle, it hurts. She cried. You're a big girl. Big girls don't cry. That night, while everyone was sound asleep, Mitch got intimate with his niece yet again. The next morning, Abby cried at breakfast. Abby, what's wrong, dear? You don't like your breakfast? Her mother asked worriedly. She's upset because I didn't let her sleep in my room last night, Harry replied when his sister remained quiet. He reached for his bacon and passed it to his sister. I'm sorry, Abby. Here, have my bacon. Abby loved bacon to a fault, but she ignored her brother, which surprised her parents. It's all my fault, Mitch admitted. Everyone, including Abby, craned their necks to look at him. I haven't been fair to her. I got her brother a phone and got her address. I should have asked what gift she would love, just like I asked Harry. Oh, that's no fault of yours. Abby is very appreciative of whatever she receives, aren't you, Abby? Eric asked his daughter. She dried her eyes and nodded. Be a good girl and eat your breakfast. Today is your brother's birthday. You two are going to have lots of fun, as always. Yes. The bouncy castle will be set up soon. I bought a lot of your favorite treats, too. It will be fun. Harry exchanged a look with his uncle, who intervened. Avery, I'm sorry to impose, but I would love to take Harry and his guests to a second location before the party ends. It's an amusement arcade. Don't worry, it's all on me. Mitch, that's too much. Did Harry ask you to do that? Avery was grateful but embarrassed. I am glad to be involved in his rite of passage into his teenage years. I don't mind doing it. Please, Avery, no need to feel some type of way. That goes for you too, Eric. I am family after all. Quit treating me like a stranger. They laughed over it, except Abby. While her mom was busy running around to make sure Harry's birthday party was a success, and her dad was engrossed in conversations with Mitch and a few friends over his thriving business, Abby trailed after her mom. Mom, I need to tell you something, she said. Avery could barely look over her shoulder, given the bunch of gifts she was carrying on her arms. Not now, Abby. Mom's busy. Please, Mommy, go play with your brother. We'll talk another time. Abby nearly shed a tear as her mother walked away. The backyard was gradually filling up with guests, but even as the number of people increased, Abby could feel Uncle Mitch's eyes watching her throughout the party. She continued to find time to pull her mom to a corner to tell her an uncomfortable truth, but one thing or the other kept disrupting them. Sometimes it was the loud music. Other times, it was her mom being called for or dragged away by one guest or the other. Poor Abby was frustrated. She badly wanted to tell someone, her mom for starters. Her dad won't understand. He might get mad at her like Uncle Mitch told her. The first time he got intimate with her during his last visit, he warned Abby not to tell anyone at all or her family will suffer. He told her that he was the one supporting her family with money and the reason why everyone was living such a good life. If Abby tells on him, he would stop helping her parents and her family will become poor. He warned her that her parents and brother will hate her and never forgive her for upsetting Uncle Mitch. Her father will never speak to her again. She and Harry may even be taken away to go live in foster homes because their parents won't be able to take care of them anymore. Mitch had made more threats and Abby had believed him. However, he had promised that if she cooperated, there won't be a repeat of the hurtful thing he did to her. When she had found him at their doorstep the previous day, Abby had been so scared of the look in his eyes when he looked down at her. It was the same look he had when he touched her in her room the first time. Uncle Mitch had lied to her. He had no intention of stopping, and Abby couldn't bear the pain. Even as she went in search of her brother, she walked in a funny way. She hoped that the fact that he had lied about stopping meant all other threats were lies too. Her brother's friends made jest of her walking style as she approached them. Harry was already filling them in about his rich uncle and the plans for his after-party. They were very impressed by it all. Harry, Abby called, wringing her hands coyly. I need to talk to you. Harry excused himself and pulled his sister aside. Are you okay? Why are you walking like that? He noticed the tears in her eyes. Abby, what's wrong? Are you still upset with me? Abby only continued to cry. Harry's friends began calling his attention to something else. Harry, Abby finally spoke up. It hurts. What hurts? My legs between them. Harry thought he understood. Go find Mom. She'll know what to do, okay? Stop crying. You'll be fine. I have to get back to my friends. I'll see you later. He kissed her forehead before running back to his friends. Abby was left disappointed once again. Distraught, she was left with one last option. Reluctantly, she walked up to her dad and tugged at his shirt. When he turned around, he was surprised to see her. His smile only widened as he picked her up. Abby winced in slight pain. Then her face was smeared with shock when her uncle surfaced. "Enjoying the party, Abby?" Mitch asked, smiling. Abby felt her skin tingle with fear as her uncle continued to watch her intently. Her father kissed her cheek and dropped her. "Can I help you with something, honey?" Eric asked. Abby looked up at her father, but all she could think about was Uncle Mitch's words. "If you tell anyone, I will stop helping your mommy and daddy. They'll go broke and will no longer be able to afford this big nice house you all live in. You and your brother will have to change to a public school. Your parents will sell their car to feed you. They'll all end up hating you. They'll never forgive you. How would you feel if you and your brother are separated from your parents because they can't take care of you? You and Harry will be forced to go to foster homes. You may never see Harry again." "Abby," Eric called, startling his daughter. "What's wrong?" Abby shook her head, her fingers trembling. "Nothing, Daddy. Are you having fun?" Uncle Mitch interjected, edging closer to her. He swept her off the ground and rocked her in his arms. Eric, content that his daughter was in good hands, strolled away to help his wife. Mitch whispered in Abby's ear, "Do you see how happy Uncle Mitch makes everybody? Harry is happy. Mommy and Daddy are happy. Guess what? I am the one who gave your daddy the money Mommy used in arranging this party. Your daddy owes me a lot of money. If you break your promise and tell our secret to anyone, Daddy will not be able to pay me back all the money I have given him, and because of that, I will have to get your daddy arrested. Do you want that?" And oh, Abby shrieked as tears ran down her face. "Then be a brave girl and don't tell anyone. If you do, things will turn out badly for your family." With that, he set her down and slapped her buttocks. "Get going, Missy." Abby went into the house and to her bedroom. She crept under her bed and cried herself to sleep while the party raged on outside. It was already dark when her parents came looking for her after Mitch had taken the kids to the arcade for video games. Eric and Avery exchanged worried glances when they found their daughter with a tear-stained face under her bed. Avery picked her up and rocked her. When they coaxed Abby to tell them why she was feeling sad and what she had wanted to say to them earlier on at the party, Abby faked a smile and lied that she had been feeling tired and wanted a nap. Her mother didn't buy it. She prepared dinner for her family and later returned to feed Abby in her room. Abby talked to Mommy. "What did you want to tell me earlier at the party?" Abby slurped her pasta. "I told you, Mom. I wanted to be excused to take a nap." "Abby, if you want to take a nap, you don't need my permission. That's how I know you're lying. Why are you lying to me, Abby?" "I am worried about you." Abby dropped her plate and lowered her eyes. "Sorry, Mommy. Tell me, did something happen? Did someone upset you at the party?" Abby thought about Uncle Mitch's words again, and fear coated her eyes. She managed to ignore it. Uncle Mitch wasn't home, and she wasn't going to get a better chance than this. Her mother was ready to listen to her. If she can expose her uncle's wicked acts now, then at least she wouldn't have to worry about enduring so much pain later that night. "Mommy, it's Uncle. Uncle Mitch." Avery repeated to be sure she heard her daughter correctly. "What happened? Did he upset you?" "He hurt me." "Hurt you? How?" Avery couldn't imagine a sweet and kind man like Mitch hurting his niece whom he doted on. Abby bit down on her lips as she tried to be more specific. "Mommy, Uncle Mitch is not good. He is a very bad man." Tears flowed from her eyes as she latched onto her mother's arm. "He is bad." Avery stared at her daughter in surprise, failing to comprehend her words. All she could think of was why Abby was saying such things about her precious uncle. Avery could not imagine how far her family would have come if Mitch wasn't in the picture. She was deeply indebted to him and appreciative of everything he had done and continued to do for her family. For this reason, she couldn't listen to anything else her daughter wanted to say beyond the first 2 sentences that accused Mitch of being bad. She scowled at her daughter. "How could you say such mean things about your uncle, Abby? What did I say about speaking ill of people? How could you call your uncle a bad person?" "But Mommy." "Shut up," Avery yelled at her. Abby cowered in fright over the anger glistening in her mother's eyes. "Is this because your uncle bought more gifts for Harry? Are you jealous of your brother? Have you forgotten it's your brother's birthday?" Avery got up on her feet. "Don't ever say such mean things about your uncle. Do you hear me? He has helped us more than you know." "So, Uncle Mitch wasn't lying about that part?" Abby thought. Then he must have been telling the truth about everything else. Cold shivers ran down Abby's spine as she watched her mother storm out of her room in annoyance. That night, Mitch returned with an excited Harry. Abby listened from her room as he conversed with her parents loudly downstairs. She watched from the railing on the first floor and clearly saw her uncle spike her parents' drinks at the kitchen area while her parents were too focused on the TV. She knew what he intended by that. He always spiked their drinks whenever he meant to sneak into her room. She rushed to her brother's room, but he was already dozing. His room was also cluttered with all the presents he received, so there was hardly any space for her to sleep in. Still, she found a spot under his bed and lay there. 30 minutes later, she heard Uncle Mitch's footsteps going towards her room and waited while her door creaked open. It took him a minute to realize she was not in there. Immediately, he stopped by Harry's room. Abby held her breath and clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream as his footsteps approached Harry's bed. It was evident from the way he was walking around that he was searching for her. When he couldn't find her anywhere, he went as far as trying to wake Harry up to ask him where his sister was. Harry was too exhausted and sleepy to focus on his uncle. Abby continued to tighten her lips as her uncle stood still wondering where she could be. All of a sudden, he circled the bed. "Abby, if you're under the bed, I'd like you to come out, please. I'd hate to wake your parents and inform them that you're hiding under the bed again." Abby didn't budge. If Uncle Mitch woke her parents, then he wouldn't be able to hurt her, would he? When he knelt down to peek under the bed, she crawled to the other end of the bed just to get away from him. Mitch smiled darkly. He got on his feet and left the room wordlessly. Abby remained there, shaking like a leaf. She managed to drift off to sleep. When she woke up the next morning, she was back in her bedroom, on her bed. She panicked. How did she get back in her room? Who carried her? She hoped and prayed it was someone else other than her uncle. She heard her family already at the breakfast table and reluctantly went down to join them. She greeted her parents and mumbled a greeting at her uncle. Avery got upset, finding her daughter's manners to be rude. She had shared with her husband what Abby had said about her uncle, and Eric had not been pleased as well. He dropped his mug of coffee. "Abby, greet your uncle properly," Eric said with a flash of impatience in his eyes. Abby greeted her uncle properly, but avoided his eyes. "Why did you sleep under your brother's bed? Your uncle found you like that." "Why, Abby?" Avery asked angrily. Harry reached forward to stroke his sister's cheek. "Did you have another nightmare?" he asked. Abby lied and nodded her head. "Okay, we can share my room tonight." "No," Avery countered. "If she has a nightmare, she and I will work through her fear while she sleeps in her own room." She stared at her daughter with angry eyes. "Young lady, you better watch your attitude. Don't ever think to be rude to your uncle again. Is that clear?" Abby gritted her teeth and nodded. Mitch offered to drop the kids off at school while their parents went to work. In the car, Harry kept chatting about his birthday party and thanking Uncle Mitch for making his dream come true. Abby sat quietly, staring out the window. Mitch dropped Harry off before continuing to Abby's school. "Don't ever sneak off to sleep elsewhere again," he warned her through his rearview mirror. "I don't like what you did last night. If you do it again, I'll get very upset and your parents will suffer." These words echoed in Abby's head after she was dropped off at school. She spent the entire day wearing a long face and dreading to go home. Luckily, her dad came to pick her up. Harry was getting extra lessons, so Abby had some time to kill with her dad. Fearfully, she tried to tell her dad about Uncle Mitch, hoping he would have a better reaction than her mother did. "Daddy." "Yes, dear?" Abby swallowed hard. "Daddy, Uncle Mitch has been bad to me. He hurts me." Her father turned down the volume of the music he was playing in the car and turned to his daughter. "What? How has Uncle Mitch been bad to you?" He ran a hand over his face. "Abby, your mom told me what you said about Uncle Mitch. Why would you say something like that? He's Uncle Mitch, the same one who spoils you with gifts. Why would you say mean things about him?" "Daddy, he is really bad. He makes me cry. It hurts every time. I'm sure he didn't mean to. Give him a break, okay? He left all his work and came to spend the holidays with us. He helped Daddy's business. He is a great guy. Forgive whatever he's done. I'm sure he didn't mean to." "No, Daddy, you have to believe me. Uncle Mitch hurt me." Just then Eric's phone rang. He shut his daughter off with a wave of his hand before taking his call. Abby continued to explain to her father, but he got upset and yelled at her to keep quiet so he can take his call. Abby cried silently. No one was listening to her. Her uncle was abusing her, but even her loving parents refused to believe her. She didn't know what else to do. She gave up hoping that her family could save her from Uncle Mitch. Days passed and Uncle Mitch continued to sneak into her room and get intimate with her right under her parents' roof. Every day, she continued to walk weirdly and cried every time she was in the bathroom. One day, Harry asked her why she was always crying in the shower. "It hurts," Abby muttered. "What?" he asked. "What Uncle Mitch does to me." She replied. "What does he do to you, Abby?" Abby sniffled. "Uncle Mitch hurts me in my room at night. He kisses me and touches me where Mommy warned me not to let anybody touch." Harry's face crumpled as he understood a bit of what his sister was insinuating. Still, he shook his head. Abby was still very young. She must be mistaken. Uncle Mitch was the best uncle in the entire world. There's no way he would do such a despicable thing to his own niece whom he cherishes. "No, Abby," he replied. "You're mistaken. Uncle Mitch would never hurt you. He is our uncle and uncles don't do that to their nieces. Uncle Mitch is family. He is like our second dad. He can't do such a thing." Abby didn't try to argue with him. She had long resigned to her fate that no one in her family was going to save her from Uncle Mitch, so she endured the pain and horror in silence. She had lost all hope and had no expectations of anyone. She couldn't blame them. Uncle Mitch was amazing exteriorly. Before he started hurting her, she loved him to the moon and back. She could never have imagined him doing such a thing to her. Maybe if she hadn't been his victim, she would have also doubted anyone who told her such things about her favorite uncle. Harry consoled her and promised to speak to their mother to help Abby. He was convinced that Abby might be experiencing changes in her body like most girls do. Maybe Abby's monthly blood flow as a girl came a bit earlier than most girls experience theirs for the first time. Harry continued to feel worried seeing how his sister's smile disappear completely over the course of the holidays and she curled back into her shell, hardly chatting with the family during family time, always keeping to herself, crying in her room and the shower, as well as walking funnily. One time, Harry was out in the yard, watching his uncle fix his dad's old truck. He continued to stare intently at his uncle while his sister's words flooded his mind. He struggled to believe that a great guy like Uncle Mitch could hurt his sister. "Something on your mind?" Mitch asked him. Harry tore his eyes away from his uncle and shook his head. "I just can't wait to grow up and be as amazing as you." Mitch burst into laughter, throwing his head back. "I bet you'll be even more amazing," he replied. Harry's smile faded. "I'm worried about Abby. I think she's still having nightmares and can't sleep by herself," he said. "Don't worry, bud. I'll tuck her in tonight and teach her how to fall asleep after a nightmare." "Really?" Harry squealed with excitement. "Thanks, Uncle Mitch." That night after dinner, Eric and Avery bid their kids goodnight. Harry held his sister by the hand and led her upstairs. He noticed how she didn't bother to beg him to sleep in his room or to come over to hers to keep her company. Abby gave him a lazy wave and went into her room. Just before Harry could go into his own room, he overheard Uncle Mitch conversing with his parents. When he drew closer to the railing, he was surprised to find his uncle lacing his parents' drinks. Why would his uncle do that? Thankfully, his parents already dozed off before Mitch could pass the drinks to them. He kept the drinks on the table in front of them so they would find and drink it when they woke up. When Mitch looked upstairs, Harry hid behind a wall to avoid being seen. Harry dashed to his room and arranged the pillows on his bed to simulate the figure of a person under the covers before he switched off his light. Then he dashed into his sister's room just as his uncle's footsteps pounded on the stairs. Abby was surprised to see him in her room. He put a finger on his lips to get her to keep quiet before crawling under her bed. "Uncle Mitch is coming. Don't let him know I am under here," he whispered. He heard Abby's breath catch in her throat at the information. Few seconds after he made himself comfortable under his sister's bed, someone rapped on Abby's door. Harry watched his uncle let himself in. "Hi, Abby. Did you enjoy your dinner?" he drawled. Abby sat up on her bed and whispered a low yes. "Good. Then you'll have enough energy for our game tonight." "No," Abby cried as he edged closer. "Please, Uncle, I don't want to play." "Oh, come on, don't be like that. You'll come to like it eventually. It won't always hurt. I don't want to play," Abby reiterated, crying softly. Harry continued to listen under his bed, wondering what game his uncle wanted to play with his sister that she didn't want to partake in because it was painful. He was shocked when his uncle's pants dropped to his ankles. He overheard something akin to a struggle above the bed and could only conclude by his sister's resistance that his uncle was pulling her to himself. "Harry!" Abby cried out. "Quiet. You'll wake everyone." Mitch snapped angrily. Harry sprang out from under the bed and was shocked to find his uncle forcefully trying to undress his little sister. "What are you doing?" he shouted, disgusted at the sight before him. Mitch almost buckled at the sight of his nephew. "Harry," he echoed, "where did you come from? How did you get in here?" Mitch asked, rushing to pull his pants back on. With flaring eyes, Harry grabbed the lamp by the bedside and threw it at his uncle. It knocked him on the head and sent Mitch tumbling on the bed. Abby shrieked in fright and crawled away from him and into her brother's waiting arms. The lamp crashed to the floor and shattered. When Mitch touched a hand to his head, he came away with blood on his fingertips. "You little shit. What did you do?" Eric and Avery came bursting through the door and were shocked to see the sight in front of them. Harry carried his crying sister and edged towards their parents where their mother took Abby. "What's going on here?" Eric asked, perplexed. Mitch stood up before Harry could sputter the truth and lied. "Those two were playing instead of sleeping. I thought I would play with them for a bit before tucking them in. Harry must have misunderstood our game of wrestling. He threw an actual lamp at my head. He injured me." "What?" Eric exclaimed, looking at his son. "He's lying, Dad. That's not what happened. You're confused, Harry." Mitch interrupted, but Harry refused to be silenced, so he yelled over his uncle's voice and told his father everything, from Abby's complaints and demeanor to what he witnessed while hiding in his sister's room. Tears rolled down Avery's eyes. She didn't want to believe it, but everything made sense. She took Abby into the bathroom to examine her, while Mitch kept trying to defend himself. When Avery wailed loudly from the bathroom, Eric's eyes turned red. He lunged forward and punched his brother in the face. Unsatisfied, he continued to punch Mitch till his brother's nose bled. Avery came out with her daughter, both crying and cuddling. Harry wiped his own eyes. Eric pulled his brother by the collar and dragged him out of the house that night. While Mitch threatened to destroy the family, Eric tossed his belongings out and shut the door. He held his head in his hands, slid to the floor, and screamed. That night, the Andersons rushed Abby to the hospital to get her checked. Abby later worked with a counselor to help her deal with her abuse and move on. Her parents never forgave themselves for not protecting her. Eric sold his house and moved his family to a different city after a successful lawsuit against his brother. Mitch was imprisoned for 14 years. The Andersons started afresh in a new, smaller town. Eric and Avery swore to be more attentive as parents and to protect their children even from so-called family because monsters aren't always strangers. Every day, they quizzed their children about their day in school, asked if there was anything or anyone bothering them, and assured them to never be afraid to tell their parents anything no matter who threatens them. The moral of the story: parents should always pay extra attention to their kids, especially when the kids seem uncomfortable around certain adults irrespective of whether the adults are family members or not. Find out why your kids are uncomfortable around them. Don't always assume anyone is incapable of hurting your child. Protect your child at all costs.